Hello everyone, and a really warm welcome to this year's summit of the International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure. This year we're going to be focusing on the accountability of the infrastructure sector for our future. I'm Richard Threlfall, and I have the great privilege to be the chair of ICSI. And I'd like to start by just first of all thanking all of you for taking the opportunity to join us today and be part of this conversation, and for the founding partners of ICSI for their support in staging the summit today. We see this conversation today as an important step on the road to COP27. This is all about how do we engage and marshal action in order to solve the existential challenges facing the world today. What are those challenges? I think I'm in an audience where we understand them well, but perhaps still we don't quite understand the urgency of what the world is facing. As we meet today, we are only just over 7 years from the point at which the Earth's warming will be 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, setting us after that on a path into the unknown, to be honest, where it's not clear to what extent humanity's ingenuity will be able to stop the severe effects on people and planet of ever greater global warming. And it's not just a climate emergency. We also understand that it's a social emergency, characterised by the breakdown in relations within societies caused principally by inequalities in wealth and inequalities due to the way that individuals are discriminated against and treated differently. And the infrastructure and engineering sectors, I've always believed, sit right at the heart of being able to deal with and contribute to and indeed lead on these challenges. If we take, as I believe we should, as our balanced scorecard for the future of the world, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and if we break them down to the underlying indicators, we see that infrastructure supports the attainment of something like 92% of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The infrastructure and engineering professions sit right at the heart of what needs to be done to make the world a better place. And how do we do that? We do that through taking accountability for that where we can make a difference. And we do that also by collaborating on a global basis in order to bring together all the individuals who can really make a difference. We need to, I believe, urgently rethink the way in which we look at the role of engineers and the infrastructure sector. We need to plan, deliver, maintain, and operate our infrastructure in a way that is cognizant of environmental, social, and governance challenges. We need the engineering community, all parts of the engineering community, to operate with an enhanced level of understanding and expertise that goes to issues like net zero and what it means in order to develop socially inclusive infrastructure, for example. Traditionally, engineers are called in to help do projects right, but I believe we also have a role now in helping to guide the world as to what the right projects to do are. And this takes us to the role of ICSI. ICSI's mission is to mobilise this engineering-led coalition to make resilience and sustainability a cornerstone of every decision across the whole of the infrastructure lifecycle in communities across the whole globe. ICSI is seeking to raise the voice of the engineering profession, to ensure that as countries and companies look to develop infrastructure, that it is built in a way that is sustainable and resilient, not just now, but well into the future. We want to help place engineers and the engineering profession at the forefront of climate and social action. We've just launched our 3-year strategic plan. For those of you that have had a chance to take a look at it, you'll see that we have 4 high-level delivery pathways which form the centrepiece of the way in which we're operating. First of those is our Global Engineering Impact Campaign and our progress reporting system. The second is global advocacy for systemic change. The third is all around our role in providing thought leadership and knowledge for action. And the fourth is all about supporting innovation in engineering delivery. We also have 3 specific things that we're focused on as we go into the year ahead, which we want to share with you. Firstly, many of you will know that we're an official partner in Race for Resilience, the sibling to the Race for Net Zero. And we're looking to help recruit the engineering community, to help frontline communities to achieve what they need to in terms of the resilience of infrastructure. And in particular, to help the most exposed communities to be able to do what they have to do in order to become resilient against climate change. Secondly, we will be launching again the ICE Brunel series in a partnership with ICSI. Those of you who know of the Institution of Civil Engineers Brunel series will know the way in which it has advocated in recent years for everything that the engineering profession needs to do in the areas of sustainability. As we go into this year, we're going to be focusing on developing partnerships with a number of key cities around the world to bring the experience of the engineering community to help those cities to tackle their biggest challenges. And thirdly, I'd like to highlight the global consultation that we're going to run on the Sendai paper. We're going to look at what it's achieved to date, what the gaps are, and make recommendations for the coming decade. And ultimately, there will be a policy paper from this, authored by ICSI. We're going to conduct a global survey, as I just said, and targeted convenings of conversations, and aim to deliver the policy paper by September of this year, in time to present the findings at COP27. And we see this project as a way of giving engineers a voice on disaster risk and resilience in that influential global forum. So, what can you do? Firstly, again, thank you for joining the conversation today, and I hope that you will learn a great deal from it, but moreover, I hope that you will be inspired to recognise that we are forming here a community that can really bring the weight of engineers and the infrastructure sector more broadly together. Ultimately, we want to create a global movement for engineering action. And I encourage you to join with us, for example, to join our Race for Resilience campaign and participate in the consultations that we will hold through the year. This summit marks a new, and for me, and I think all the colleagues involved in it, a really exciting new point in the development of what ICSI is doing. We see ourselves drawing on ever greater collaborations with partners, many of whom are represented in the summit today. At the end of the day, I believe we all share the same desire for a future that is more sustainable and creates a better quality of life for every person on the planet. And I've been involved in the infrastructure sector for more than 20 years. And every morning I get up and I feel inspired by the fact that this industry is so central to everything that the world needs to do. I used to say that infrastructure was the foundation of civilization, but I see it now as more than that. It needs to be the foundation of a sustainable future for everyone, everywhere. And now, it gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Ellen Lindsay Awuku. Ellen is a youth development advocate with a special interest in environment, youth civic participation and youth empowerment. She currently serves as the Vice President of International Falcon Movement Socialist Education International. She sits on the task force of International Coordination Meeting of Youth Organisations and coordinates Green Springs Global Foundation, an NGO focused on environmental protection through advocacy and education, as well as empowering locals to make sustainable choices with regard to the environment. Until September last year, Ellen Lindsay was the National Coordinator for Young Reporters for the Environment Ghana and Eco Schools Ghana. And she led the global climate strikes in Ghana. So, Ellen, we're absolutely delighted to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining. And over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen Lindsay Awuku. I'm an environmentalist and climate activist from Ghana, and I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to address you all as speaker for this important summit. Centuries of human progress and acceleration have brought us to higher levels of growth and development. Yet this same human civilization in many ways threatens the very conditions that have made these a possibility: the sustainability of the Earth's climate. Evidence of climate change and its socio-economic impact lies vividly across the globe and is felt across all sectors. Until the world transitions to a net zero economy, climate change will continue to pose massive threats to the planet's sustainability and human existence. Unfortunately, though, emissions continue to rise and scientists keep warning us over and over about reaching tipping points. Many people, governments and institutions, however, continue to look on unmoved to take action to reach a just net zero transition. Research suggests that should all fulfill their pledges and commitments to reach a just net zero transition, it will still be impossible to hold global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Reaching net zero transition would require careful balancing of shorter-term risks of poorly prepared or uncoordinated action with longer-term risks of insufficient or delayed action. According to a recent report published by UNOPS, infrastructure plays a critical role in enabling prosperity of people and planet and enabling long-term development. Despite these benefits, it is still responsible for vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, estimated at 79% of total emissions, with most associated with energy, buildings, and transport. As with climate change mitigation, infrastructure plays a central role in climate change adaptation. Infrastructure accounts for 88% of the forecasted global adaptation costs, with the majority of costs originating in water and the building sectors. Our infrastructure is directly impacted by climate change, and the effects are already being felt across the globe. With rising average temperatures, acute hazards such as heat waves and floods increase in frequency and severity, and chronic hazards such as drought and rising sea level intensifies. Most recently, The sixth assessment report of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC AR6, reaffirmed that continued GHG emissions will result in increasingly severe consequences for the Earth system and potentially abrupt and catastrophic changes that might occur as the climate passes tipping points. The impacts of climate change are disproportionately burdening developing countries of the global south, including African countries, despite contributing the list of GHG emissions. Due to high levels of vulnerability, low adaptive capacity, and widespread poverty. Now, evidence presented by IPCC reveals that in recent decades, Africa's temperature have been rising with an increase in heat waves and hot days. Rainfall patterns have been changing, resulting in devastating impacts on key economic sectors vital to the livelihoods of millions of people. Climate change has exposed Africa's vulnerability and the urgent need to reinforce all efforts aimed at combating the crisis. For example, between 2018 and 2019, a high drought period hit many countries in Africa, and the agriculture sector suffered reduction in crop yields and crop failure, loss of livestock and reduced livestock production, leading to high spikes in floods, in food prices, and result in severe food insecurity for the most vulnerable population. In my home country of Ghana, temperatures have risen by approximately 1 degree Celsius since the 1960s, and Ghana will continue to get warmer with mean temperatures projected to increase by 1 degree Celsius to 3 degrees Celsius by mid-century, and by 2.3 degrees Celsius to 5.3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Climate change is also expected to increase the risk and intensity of water scarcity and drought across the country. Climate-induced migration is rising, with most people migrating from northern Ghana, while there is increasing drought, to southern parts of the country. This is leading to loss of slums and communicable diseases in urban areas as a result of poor living conditions in high population density areas. Now, for us as young people, climate change creates high degrees of uncertainty about our future and what that holds for us, as we will bear the brunt of this crisis. We will leave the earth to our children and future generations. Young people will continue to bear the brunt of the crisis, and young people are also taking up the challenge and becoming increasingly aware of the necessity of a net zero climate resilient future. We are at the forefront of many climate action initiatives and innovations, partaking in global dialogues and working towards more practical solutions, but there is still a lot more to be done. As an environmentalist and climate activist from Ghana, I felt I had to take action. So in March 2018, following the example of Greta Thunberg and the international community, I launched a Friday for Future movement together with Young Reporters for the Environment Ghana, which I was then coordinating. From time to time, we would gather young people from schools, civil society, development agencies, and the public to strike and demand urgent climate action. This led to the presentation of an 11-point petition on climate action to the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation in 2019. I am also very proud to say that this in part contributed to the development of a 5-year climate action plan for the city of Accra, led by the then Mayor Mohamed Ejesowa, who also often joined us on our climate strikes. I have also trained 100 young people to report on the environment and climate change issues in Ghana, and they continue to do so even as at today. With the Eco Schools program, I have trained close to 2,000 children on waste management and circular economy models through skills development, critical thinking, and innovation in a bid to combat climate change while taking up countless tree planting activities in different schools and communities at the same time. Young people must continue to actively engage stakeholders and policymakers at local, national, and global levels in creating the necessary platforms to increase awareness of climate action and the urgency to stop the business as usual approach and to be more critical about concrete and systematic solutions, including workable policies to overturn the climate crisis and avoid tipping points. Young people must be involved in running educational programs, conserving our nature, promoting renewable energy, adopting environmentally friendly practices, and implementing adaptation and mitigation projects. We are doing much, of course, but there is still room for more action. The expectation of young generations from the international community are quite simple. 1. Treat climate change as the crisis that it is. Understand the dangers of inaction, of acting too late, and the need of supporting innovative approaches at local levels with global impact. Support youth-led initiatives on climate change, on climate action, and leave no one behind, especially young people from marginalized and underserved communities. Mainstream climate action in all sectors of the economy and promote and require sustainability reporting at all levels. Infrastructure for the future must be designed, constructed, managed, keeping in mind both climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Increase climate financing and invest in renewable energy. We need to switch to more renewable energy sources, prioritize green infrastructure and stormwater management, and take an environmental justice approach designed to disaster management without perpetuating inequalities in communities. Financing of infrastructure must be consistent with low emission and climate resilient development. Ecosystem-based approaches can provide an effective complement or substitute for traditional built infrastructure. Finally, we also expect that the building infrastructure and the professionals must also tap into the knowledge and experience of indigenous people in finding solutions to the climate crisis. As an example, in the past and even now, Tuesdays were resting days for seas and oceans, and Ghanaian fishermen were banned from going to the sea on these days. This was actually a means to control overfishing and allow time for replenishment. In many villages, there were sacred days where people were not allowed to go to the forest or to go hunting in order to protect wildlife. There are many of such local and indigenous examples. Now, I am speaking to you as engineers and infrastructural professionals. You are major actors of development and highly regarded as the custodians of the built environment. Therefore, you have to be well equipped with the recent issues for exploring technology, wisdom, and insight. You must champion the cause of incorporating climate change issues in future infrastructural development policy, which is largely vested upon the engineering community. Finally, to all of us, climate change is already here, regardless of who did what. The most important thing is what we can do from now to change this narrative. The IPCC has given us several reports, and we have data from so many researchers to guide us. It is time to now act and with urgency to reverse this crisis. It is true, it sounds very scary and like a very great task. However, if we all work together, both policymakers, investors, the engineering community, civil society, academia, we can solve this. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Savina Carluccio, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure, ICSI for short. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all today from wherever you're joining us from. Firstly, I'd like to thank our chair, Richard Threlfall, and our keynote speaker, Ellen Lindsay Abuku, for their important messages and for really setting the tone of this summit. There are 4 parts to today's event, and you can find details on the agenda tab. Once the session ends, you will need to click into the next one to then continue following the summit. The summit will be recorded, and recordings will be made available after the event at the same link you've used to join in our webpage. I'd also like to make you aware of a few features on this platform, and we encourage you to use them to interact with us, with each other, and with the event content. You can submit a question for our speakers when prompted. Each session has an Ask a Question function. Questions are selected by the moderators and to be answered by speakers or organizers will be published in this chat box. At different stages of the summit, polls will pop up on screen, and we would really love to get your input on the topics that we will discuss today. Please join our networking lounge. I understand there's loads of comments already in there. That's great to hear. And the networking lounge can be accessed from the top bar. And you can use the space to introduce yourself, to tell us where you're joining from, but also to interact and discuss with organizers and your fellow delegates. If you want to view the networking lounge alongside the live streaming, you will need to open it as a different tab. You can also visit the resource hub, which is also accessible through the top bar, and collates in one place all the relevant resources from the ICSI founding partners. Please engage with us on social media throughout the day using the hashtag ICSI Summit 22. And finally, we're lucky to have several members of the Climate Champions team taking part in our summit today. Between the sessions, you will hear from some of the Climate Champions Youth Fellows in short video clips, and they will be sharing their perspectives on some of the key issues that we will be exploring today. At the start of session 2, we will also hear from Nigel Topping, who is the UN High-Level Climate Champion for COP26, and who's been instrumental in launching the Race to Resilience campaign, which ICSI is proud to be an official partner to. I'm now delighted to introduce session 1, Transforming Urban Infrastructure Policymakers' Perspective with Gregor Robertson and Manuel Valdez Lopez. Gregor Robertson is a global ambassador at the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, GCOM for short. He's helping 11,000 cities to tackle climate change and energy challenges across the globe. Gregor served 3 terms as a mayor of Vancouver from 2008 to 2018. And during his tenure, Vancouver's economy led the country, and the city achieved record-setting years for building housing, childcare, and job space, growing public transit ridership and investment, and achieving the lowest carbon emissions in North America. Manuel Valdez Lopez is the manager of mobility and infrastructures at Barcelona City Council, and he is responsible for the areas of mobility, energy self-sufficiency, service supplies coordination, transportation networks, coordination of public works, urban resilience, and innovation. Manuel holds a civil engineering master's, a doctorate at Barcelona Civil Engineering School, and an executive management degree at ICSI. Over to you, Gregor and Manuel. I hope you enjoyed the session, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the International Coalition of Sustainable Infrastructure 2022 Summit. I'm Gregor Robertson. I'm the Global Ambassador with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, otherwise known as GCOM, and the former mayor of Vancouver, Canada. And one of ICSI's aims is to raise the voice of the engineering community on important topics such as sustainability and resilience in infrastructure. ICSI is working to get engineers involved in the decision-making process at all stages of infrastructure development, and not just when the project needs to be delivered. So this first session of the summit is focused on transforming urban infrastructure from a local urban policymaker's perspective. The infrastructure is happening in our cities all the time. Really important to get a sense of how it's shaped and created. And I'm really pleased to be here today with Mr. Manuel Valdez Lopez, who is Managing Director of Mobility and Infrastructure with the great city of Barcelona, to discuss his city's sustainable infrastructure plans and projects and how the global engineering community can get involved to support these efforts. So I'd like to kick off our conversation by asking Manuel to share with us what Barcelona is doing on sustainable mobility and infrastructure, including some examples. I know that Barcelona has been a leading edge city on active transportation projects. cycling and walking, which are close to our hearts here in Vancouver as well, and as well on broader green infrastructure and biodiversity projects. Manuel, bienvenidos, over to you.
Thank you, Gregor. It's good to be with you here today. First of all, I think the engineers are the key piece in the multifunctional teams that have to build the future world. So maybe we have now the last opportunity of change really the actual condition of the world. So we have to promote the values of collaboration, of the compromise in the work and the co-creation, and it's key for resolve the problem that we have actually on the table. First of all, talking about the infrastructure, I think it's important to remember the role of the infrastructure is the support for the different systems that offer services to the cities. The most important is the citizens and not the infrastructure itself, but it's the instrument that we have to build for create value for the citizens in the sense of social cohesion and economical growing. So it's important to guarantee the quality and the continuity of services for advance in the world of infrastructure. And we have sort of two kinds of infrastructure, the transport infrastructure and service infrastructure. So in the city, I would like to share with you our main project actually in this both kind of infrastructure. So first of all, in transport infrastructure, the public transportation is the spine of the mobility, especially for interurban trips. Many projects are developing for increase the network capacity and offer a better alternative of the use of private vehicles, mainly in collaboration with another administrations, regional or state administration. As three main examples of public transportation, we have the construction of the new Sagrera Intermodal Station. It's a station for 15 million travelers and around 1.3 billion euros. So it will be the main intermodal station of the south of Europe. The tram network connection, we have two networks of tramway in the city, and we are building now the connection between one another. It will increase in 117,000 travelers the demand capture and reduce the use of 14,800 of private vehicles. So, and the third one is the line 910 of our metropolitan system that build the regional government and connect the two isolated network in the city actually, and it will contribute to 161,000 of passengers to each day. So I think in public transportation, these are very important changes that we're actually doing in the city. We finished the building 3 years ago of a new network of buses in the city, and we are working actually in 4 local town buses in the mode of service on demand. So I think we are transformation the buses network in the city in all the categories, and we hope in the next year to global cover the real necessity inside the city. Another kind of examples related to the pedestrians, we have the Superblock project. Maybe you listen about it. This is the main goal of this project is the implementation of 21 new green axes and 21 squares in the example district in the same center of the city. And this is very important for the increasing of the green infrastructure in the city and to give priority to pedestrian. The accessibility in cars is secondary. So the main goal is that we transform totally this space especially for pedestrian. And then the project of 30 kilometers hour city. So reduce the speed in all the network that is not the main one in the city to 30 kilometers hour. Is practically more than 65% of the total streets of the city. So it's the reduction of car speeds with the use of radar systems and another things we are collocating in the public space. And finally, the bicycle and scooter users, we are increasing the 22% the use of bicycle in the last 2 years. We hope to arrive to a 5% in the modal distribution using bicycle and scooters. And actually, we are working in the construction of the last kilometers for arrive the next year to 272 kilometers of bicycle roads in city. So I think these are some examples of our investment in infrastructure. And the last thing is about the services. I'd like to share with you some services infrastructure that we are developing. First is the first network for district and heating, district heating and cooling network supply. We have two networks in one another part of the city. We will create a third network in this multimodal station of Sagrera that I told. And then the building of energy generation systems. We have actually installed 3.8 megawatts of power in the public energy generation system. And we decided to raise the self-consumption shared with citizens. Or the more important network of research for electric vehicles in Spain. We will arrive in 2014 to 6,000 more than 6,000 charge points in the public space and in the underground. These are, I think, the main project we are developing now with transportation and services infrastructures.
Well, fantastic, and really impressed to hear that scale of infrastructure investment and change. That's I know many cities around the world, including Vancouver, have been inspired by Barcelona and other European cities that have very aggressive green infrastructure and transportation investments and builds that are active right now. You know, if we see the impacts of climate around the world in our cities, very significant impacts and costs that are piling up, and I think the awareness or literacy with climate is has never been higher. Obviously, I think that gives more momentum to the changes that need to take place in our cities. But at the same time, though, you know, we're meeting these needs for climate impacts. I would assume in Barcelona, with the impact on Europe of the war in Ukraine, with a lot of people a lot of refugees, a lot of people movement. There's obviously needs for today to deal with, as you outlined, all of the transportation investments to move people around the city more safely, with less impact on climate, and make sure, you know, slowing people down in the cars and making sure there's active transportation options and public transit that's accessible. Those immediate needs are huge. How are you balancing the not only the immediate needs, but the long term, the future impacts on all this infrastructure of climate, all the climate risk that we face right now, as well as making sure that all people from the most vulnerable communities have equal access to this infrastructure? How do you balance these difficult decisions with infrastructure?
Yes, Grigori, really, there are some difficult decisions that we have to make. Highlight the need for resilient infrastructure is important in order to be able to respond to current and foreseeable future risk. The long life cycle of infrastructure and high investment required for that versus uncertain and changing nature of the risk landscape. So the latest episodes of the Gloria storm surge, the COVID pandemic, and many other that is occurring extreme hot temperatures, for example, infrastructure need to be planned integrating the resilience logic. I think it has to be an important part of the design process of the infrastructure. The infrastructure not only have to be robust and resistant, but also to be redundant and resourceful, and above all, adaptable and flexible. I think mm, the multifunction of the infrastructure served to propose during the pace time and to absorb the eventual risk emergency situation when needed. For example, in our first wave of COVID, we reconverted many sport facilities as extension of nearby hospital. So it was possible because they are distributed around all the neighborhoods uh, of the city and are equitable, equipped in terms of to access to services and infrastructure. So it was possible thanks to the collaboration with the regional and national governments. So I think the collaboration in one side and in the other, the flexibility and of the design of the infrastructure are two things very important. Um, for example, we develop in the city the accessibility board is related to collaborate with the different organization representing of disability people, vulnerable collective, blind people, and we together participate and opine about the main city projects or specific ones, how to develop the infrastructure for them, for helping them, how to integrate these people to our public life. I think Barcelona is one of the cities that more dedicates efforts and budget to create a special public space for these people. So it's important. They're very important. Their participation in the design project of the city.
Kudos for that. Maybe just a specific question around climate impacts. And if you look at many of our cities around the world, obviously fire, interface fire, when there's forest cover nearby, and the smoke impact of that, flooding is impacting many of our cities. And I'm curious, in Barcelona, as an example, are you looking specifically with your infrastructure investment, your new green infrastructure, at protecting the city from these extreme events?
Yes, Grigor, when we created the resilience board, we really were thinking in which are the risks that have the city from different sources, from infrastructure, from social sources, from the climate sources, and we are identifying this risk. We did the Atlas of Resilience of the city and the resilience profile together with United Nations UN Habitat resilience team that is installed here in Barcelona from practically 8 years. And we are working on that, helping another cities in the creation of this global map. We are working actually in the creation of the risk map of the city, developing this atlas of resilience, consulting all the persons inside the city hall that are have to talk about their areas and how to evaluate the risk related to the probability of occurrence and the impact in the life of city. And we are creating inside the resilience plan of the city that we will finish around November or December of this year. But we are working on that practically for 14 years. So we have a resilience department inside the city that is dedicated practically to the creation of resilience of all the areas inside the city hall. So we are seriously working on that, and I think when we have really the crisis moment, we aboard to this moment with together with the police, with the fire department. So all the people is concentrated on that. But when it's finished with this resilience department, we analyze which were the causes of this situation, how can we do it better, how to provide the opportunities inside the crisis, how to redefine all the procedures or the working procedures or for avoid the next situation in a better form. This is the function of this resilience department that is very transversal inside the city hall, and it depends of the global managing of the city hall. So we are really working on that, and we have an experience that is very good to share with other cities. We are really pleased to do it.
Well, that's very helpful. I know the cities that are tuned on in the Global Covenant of Mayors, there's 11,700 cities of all sizes who are part of the Global Covenant, and not only with reporting their climate emissions and action plans, but learning from each other. And undoubtedly, Barcelona has some great examples, and that resilience board, really interesting model in terms of approaching all of those impacts, all of those risks to your city, with a wide array of the professionals, citizens. Thank you for sharing that lesson. Any other specific examples from Barcelona and how they might be useful or relevant to other cities, or to those people who are in the engineering profession, who are working on civil engineering or infrastructure? Any other lessons or examples from Barcelona that you want to share?
Grigor, I think the engineering is really a great career. And maybe this young generation have the last chance for climate change mitigation and adaptation. So when I talk with students in the university, I feel that they are really engaged on that. They are thinking that the engineering career has to give them the tools for really transform the society. And it's very important to focus them in the people, not in the infrastructure itself. So the people is the main goal. The people conditions changing is the main goal of any infrastructure, because the infrastructure itself is nothing. It's just a resource to arrive to give a service to people. So I think in one way, generate illusion for this transforming or for this maintenance of the city. In many cases, the maintenance we don't give to maintenance of the infrastructure. They are really power itself, and it's very important in terms of creating resilience, of reduce risk for the citizens in the public space. So increased awareness that we are vulnerable to multiple sort of risk, the opportunity to integrate the resilience logic in the futures of the infrastructure investments, and also the infrastructure to build back better after the pandemic and a more sustainable way. We had a signal of we have to change something. I think that we have to accelerate the change to meet the really climate change mitigation and adaptation targets, as well as sustainable development goals. So we don't have time to lost. We have to do it now. And I think the engineers are a key piece in this transformation, and engage all the engineers to really abort this problem as the main problem of the profession.
Yeah, well said. Well, on a number of levels, both your words about centering infrastructure around people, that infrastructure is a tool ultimately for people, and whether it's design, building, maintaining it, operating it, all of that needs to have people at the core. Really important words, and not always shared among the professions that work on it. It's easy for everyone to focus on what needs to be built or operated. But yeah, definitely in keeping with Barcelona's commitment to its citizens, it's good to hear you say the importance of people-centered infrastructure. Really appreciate all of your words, your wise words today, Manuel, both on infrastructure and the life of the city front, because I think all of this people can learn from your city. It's obviously lots of difficulties facing many of our cities, but fantastic challenges for all of the particularly young people coming into careers in engineering or infrastructure or city building, working in local government. There's all kinds of great opportunities to create a more viable and vibrant future for all of us. And your words today have been very helpful in sharing the successes and challenges on the front lines in Barcelona. So really appreciate your input for joining us today, and all that you're doing in Barcelona to be leaders and to share how you're doing on this, particularly on sustainable mobility and infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Manuel, and to all of those watching, please stay tuned for the rest of the ICSI Summit today. There are lots of other great sessions to come, and we look forward to this being a very engaged process with all of you as this International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure takes it to the next level in transforming our cities and all of the infrastructure that makes them worth living in. Thanks, everybody. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you, Grigor, and thanks for the invitation.